Max Yasgur's farm, Bethel, New York. Monday morning, August 18, 1969. The sun was rising over 600 acres of trampled grass and abandoned dreams. 3 days earlier, 400,000 people had gathered here for what they called 3 days of peace and music. Now, as the final morning dawned, only 30 to 40,000 remained. The rest had left. Back to jobs. Back to Monday morning reality. Back to the world that was waiting outside this temporary utopia. But those who stayed, the ones too tired to move, the ones who couldn't bear to leave, the ones who somehow knew something important was about to happen, those people were about to witness history. Because at 9 a.m., when the rest of America was starting their work week, Jimi Hendrix was about to take the stage and play the most important performance of his life. By August 1969, Woodstock had become mythology before it even ended. The festival was supposed to be a simple concert. Promoters Michael Lang, Artie Kornfeld, Joel Rosenman, and John Roberts had a vision, a music festival in upstate New York that would showcase the biggest acts of the era. They secured Max Yasgur's 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel. They sold tickets at $18 for all 3 days. They erected fences, built a stage, planned for maybe 50,000 people. 400,000 showed up. The roads into Bethel became parking lots. Cars abandoned for miles. People walking, hitchhiking, doing whatever it took to reach the farm. The fences that were supposed to control entry lasted maybe a day before being trampled or torn down. Tickets became irrelevant. Woodstock declared itself a free festival because there was no other choice. What was planned as an orderly concert transformed into something unprecedented. A temporary city, a gathering larger than most towns in America. 400,000 young people creating, for 3 days, an alternative society built on music and mud and shared belief that something better was possible. Friday, August 15th. The festival began with Richie Havens, who played for hours because other acts weren't ready yet. Technical delays everywhere. Sound system problems. Artists arriving late. Havens, a folk singer with a distinctive guitar style and powerful voice, played every song he knew, then started improvising, finally creating Freedom on the spot, a song that would become one of Woodstock's defining moments. But it was born out of chaos, out of necessity, out of the festival already being something other than what anyone had planned. Saturday brought more rain, more mud, more chaos, and more legendary music. Santana, a relatively unknown band, played a set that made them stars overnight. The Grateful Dead struggled with technical issues, but powered through. Creedence Clearwater Revival played at 3 a.m. to a crowd that could barely stay awake. Janis Joplin poured her soul out through songs about pain and love and whiskey. The Who smashed through their rock opera, Tommy, as the sun came up Sunday morning. By Saturday night, the festival had become a survival exercise as much as a concert. Food ran low. Medical tents overflowed with people having bad trips or needing treatment for exhaustion. The rain turned Max Yasgur's farm into a sea of mud, so deep people lost shoes and sometimes couldn't walk. Porta potties overflowed. The smell became legendary in the worst way. But the music continued, because that's what everyone had come for. That's what made the mud and the hunger and the lack of sleep bearable. Every few hours, another iconic performance. Another moment that would be remembered forever. Sunday brought more impossibility. Jefferson Airplane at 8 a.m. Grace Slick's voice cutting through the morning fog. Joe Cocker's spastic, brilliant cover of With a Little Help from My Friends that redefined the Beatles' song. The band playing their country rock fusion as the afternoon stretched on. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in their second performance ever as a group, proving they were already legendary. And all the while, people kept leaving. Sunday afternoon, Monday morning was coming. Jobs were waiting. Real life was calling. The temporary utopia couldn't last forever. By Sunday evening, when the schedule said Jimi Hendrix would close the festival around midnight, maybe half the crowd had left. 200,000 people gone. 200,000 remaining. Then the delays continued. Technical problems. Equipment failures. Acts running long. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. More people leaving with every hour. The organizers offered Jimi a choice. Go on at midnight and play for 200,000, or wait until you're truly the final act, even if that means playing in the morning. Jimi chose to wait. He wanted to close Woodstock properly. wanted to be the last voice everyone heard before the festival ended and reality returned. He didn't know that choice meant he'd play for a fraction of the crowd. Didn't know that by the time he took the stage at 9 Monday morning, 360,000 people or more would be gone. But maybe he suspected. Maybe he knew. Maybe that's why he was nervous. By then, most people had left. Buses and cars departing through the night. 400,000 people shrinking to 300,000, then 200,000, then 100,000. By Monday morning, when Jimi finally walked on stage, maybe 30 to 40,000 people remained. Some accounts say as few as 25,000. The crowd that had been larger than many cities had become a village. A determined village. A village of those who refused to leave until they saw what Jimi Hendrix would do to close out the most important music festival in history. Backstage, in the early morning hours, Jimi was nervous. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. He was supposed to play for 500,000 people. At night, under stars. The perfect closing moment for the perfect festival. Instead, he was about to play for a scattered crowd on a Monday morning while most of America was drinking coffee and reading the paper. His band wasn't helping his confidence. The Jimi Hendrix Experience, the group that had recorded 3 smash albums and toured the world, had broken up 2 months earlier at the Denver Pop Festival. Personal tensions, creative differences, the weight of fame crushing what had once felt effortless. So Jimi had assembled a new group. He called them Gypsy Sun and Rainbows. It was one of his largest bands ever. 6 people. Mitch Mitchell on drums, the only holdover from the Experience. Billy Cox on bass, an old friend from Jimi's Army days, someone he trusted completely. Larry Lee on rhythm guitar, the only other guitarist Jimi ever shared a stage with in a major performance. And 2 percussionists, Juma Sultan and Jerry Valles, adding layers of rhythm Jimi had never explored before. They'd only performed together twice before Woodstock. The rehearsals had been rough. Really rough. Tapes from those sessions reveal a band that simply could not play well together, according to scholars who studied them later. The timing was off. The arrangements felt uncertain. If you listened to those rehearsal tapes, you wouldn't believe this group could pull off anything memorable. But Jimi believed. Or maybe he just hoped. Dig, we'd like to get something straight, Jimi said into the microphone as he took the stage that Monday morning. We got tired of the Experience and all that mess. So we decided to change the whole thing around and call it Gypsy Sun and Rainbows. Short for nothing but a band of gypsies. The crowd, tired, muddy, sunburned, but still present, roared. Jimi strapped on his white Fender Stratocaster, the guitar that had become an extension of his body, the instrument he spoke through when words weren't enough. And he began to play. The set lasted nearly 2 hours, one of the longest performances of his career. He opened with Message to Love, a new song most people had never heard. Bold move. No safe choices. No pandering. Just Jimi declaring that this would be on his terms. Then came the hits. Hear My Train, A Comin', Spanish Castle Magic, Red House, Foxy Lady. Each song stretched, reimagined, transformed by the expanded band and Jimi's willingness to experiment in front of whatever audience remained. At one point during Mastermind, Jimi's high E string broke. Most guitarists would stop, ask for a replacement guitar, take a break. Jimi played the rest of the song with 5 strings. The audience, those who had stayed, those who had believed something important would happen if they just waited, began to realize they were witnessing something beyond a concert. This wasn't just music. This was Jimi Hendrix playing like the world was ending, or beginning, or both at the same time. Song after song. Lover Man, Villanova Junction Blues. The band struggled at times, that lack of rehearsal showing through, but Jimi's presence, his sheer force of will and genius, held everything together. Then, an hour and 45 minutes into the set, Jimi launched into Voodoo Child, Slight Return. The crowd erupted. This was the song, the riff that defined an era. Jimi's guitar screaming and wailing, his feedback and distortion, not just technical tricks, but expressions of something primal and true. The song built and built. Louder. More intense. Jimi lost in the music, his body moving like he was channeling something beyond himself. His afro silhouetted against the morning sky, his white Stratocaster catching the sunlight. And then, without warning, without telling the band what he was about to do, Jimi hit the opening notes of the Star-Spangled Banner, the United States national anthem. A song every American child learns in school. Stand up, hand over heart, face the flag. A song played at baseball games and 4th of July celebrations and military ceremonies. A song that represents tradition, patriotism, the established order. A song you're not supposed to question or challenge or reimagine. Jimi Hendrix took that song and tore it apart. The band tried to follow him for a few notes, uncertain what was happening. Then they wisely stopped, laying down their instruments, letting Jimi stand alone. This wasn't a group performance anymore. This was Jimi speaking directly to America through his guitar. A solo conversation between one man and his country. What came out of that Stratocaster wasn't music in any conventional sense. It was screaming, bombs falling from the sky, machine guns firing in bursts, the wail of air raid sirens, the chaos of war rendered in feedback and distortion and controlled noise. Every technique Jimi had pioneered, the wah-wah pedal, the feedback manipulation, the dive bombing with the tremolo bar, all of it deployed to paint a sonic picture of Vietnam. His guitar became helicopters, the distinctive whop-whop-whop of Hueys flying over jungle canopy. Then explosions, grenades detonating, artillery shells landing, the screech of fighter jets. Every sound Americans saw on the nightly news, every sound that haunted the dreams of soldiers overseas. Jimi pulled it all out of 6 strings. But listen closer. Between the bombs and the chaos, the actual melody of the anthem still lived. Francis Scott Key's words about rockets' red glare and bombs bursting in air, written during the War of 1812, suddenly had new meaning. Jimi wasn't destroying the anthem. He was revealing what it really said, what it had always said. A song about war dressed up as patriotism. The crowd stood silent, absolutely silent. 30 to 40,000 people, not a sound. Some were crying. Others sat stunned, unable to process what they were hearing. This was the national anthem, but it sounded like nothing they'd ever experienced, like everything they'd felt but couldn't articulate. Some in the crowd saw it immediately as protest. And Wilson of Heart, who would later become a rock legend herself, was there in the mud that morning. Years later, she talked about hearing explosions in Jimi's playing. Clear, unmistakable bombs and gunshots. An anti-war statement delivered through music because words weren't enough anymore. Others heard something different. Conservative viewers who saw the footage later heard an attack, a threat, the counterculture declaring war on American values. Hippie disrespect for everything sacred. Some called it blasphemy. Others called it treason. The angriest said Jimi should be arrested for desecrating the national anthem. But Jimi's relationship with the anthem, with war, with America, was more complicated than simple protest. He'd been a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne. Not for long. He was discharged after injuring his ankle on a jump, but long enough to train for war. Long enough to understand military discipline and sacrifice. Long enough to make friends who went straight from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to the jungles of Vietnam. Some of those friends came back. Some didn't. Some came back changed in ways that couldn't be undone. Jimi knew what it meant to serve. He'd worn the uniform, done the drills, jumped out of planes. He wasn't some draft dodger or hippie who'd never considered military service. He'd been inside that world, knew its code, respected it. But he also knew what the war was doing. To soldiers, to families, to America itself. He'd seen friends destroyed by combat or by the guilt of surviving when others didn't. He'd watched the country tear itself apart over a war that seemed to have no end, no victory, no point. So his guitar that morning spoke both languages. It screamed with the rage of protesters who wanted the killing to stop, but it also mourned with the pain of soldiers who'd done what their country asked and paid the price. It was angry and sad and confused and hopeful all at once. It was America in 1969, all the contradictions compressed into 3.5 minutes of distorted guitar. Years later, people asked Jimi about it constantly. Was it anti-war? Was it protest? Was it disrespectful? On the Dick Cavett show, just a few weeks after Woodstock, Cavett brought it up. The audience leaned forward. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Jimi smiled that shy, enigmatic smile of his. "I don't know, man," he said. "I'm American, so I played it. They made me sing it in school, so it was a flashback." Cavett pushed harder. "But wasn't it kind of unorthodox? The way you played it?" Jimi's answer was perfect. "It's not unorthodox. I thought it was beautiful. Beautiful. Not angry. Not political. Not protest. Beautiful. Maybe that's the key to understanding what happened that Monday morning. Jimi wasn't trying to destroy the anthem or disrespect America. He was trying to tell the truth about what the anthem meant in that moment. Not the sanitized version sung at football games, where everyone stands and salutes and pretends war is glorious, but the messy, complicated, painful reality of what America was in 1969. A country at war with itself. A country where young people gathered in muddy fields to imagine peace while their peers died in Southeast Asian jungles, that a country divided between parents who'd fought in World War II and children who refused to fight in Vietnam. A country where the national anthem could sound like both pride and tragedy, both patriotism and grief. Jimi's guitar captured all of it. The hope and the horror, the pride and the shame. The America that was and the America that might be. The soldiers dying overseas and the protesters marching at home. The rockets' red glare and the bombs bursting in air, and the question nobody could answer: what are we fighting for? For 3.5 minutes, Jimi Hendrix held up a mirror to his country, and the reflection was both beautiful and terrible. When the Star-Spangled Banner ended, Jimi didn't stop, didn't pause for applause. He went directly into Purple Haze. The crowd, released from the spell of the anthem, exploded. This was familiar territory. A hit. A song they could sing along to. But Purple Haze at Woodstock wasn't the studio version from 1967. It was heavier, darker, infused with everything that had come before it. The song had aged 2 years and gained the weight of everything happening in America. After Purple Haze, Jimi played a rare encore, Hey Joe, a song he almost never brought out for encores anymore. But this was Woodstock, the final moments of a festival that would define his generation. He gave them one more. At 11:15 Monday morning, 2 hours and 15 minutes after he'd started, Jimi Hendrix played his final note. The crowd, 30,000 people, maybe 40, exhausted and transformed, stood and cheered. Many were crying. They knew they'd witnessed something that would never happen again. Not just a concert, not just a performance. A moment when music became more than entertainment. When it became testimony. When it became truth. Jimi walked off that stage into mythology. His Woodstock performance, especially the Star-Spangled Banner, became one of the defining moments not just of the festival, but of the entire 1960s. That image, Jimi in his white fringed shirt and red headband, playing a white Stratocaster, his afro backlit by morning sun, became iconic. It appeared on posters, in documentaries, in history books. People who weren't even born in 1969 know that image, know that sound, know what it represents. The performance changed how people thought about the national anthem. Before Jimi, it was off-limits, sacred, untouchable. After Jimi, musicians understood they could interpret it, make it their own. Stevie Ray Vaughan would later perform Jimi's version at a baseball game. U2 included it in their Rattle and Hum tour. Countless artists have since reimagined the anthem, all following the path Jimi opened that Monday morning. But here's the thing people forget. Jimi played for maybe 40,000 people. At most. 400,000 people came to Woodstock. 360,000 or more had left before he played. They missed it. Went home. Got on with their lives. Never knew what they'd walked away from. Those who stayed witnessed history. Those who left have spent the rest of their lives wishing they hadn't. That's the thing about important moments. You don't always know you're in one until it's over. But sometimes, just sometimes, there are people who sense it. Who stay. Who wait. Who believe that if they just hold on a little longer, something extraordinary will happen. 30 to 40,000 people believed that Monday morning in August 1969. And they were right. After Woodstock, Jimi's career continued at its relentless pace. He formed Band of Gypsies with Billy Cox and Buddy Miles. Recorded a live album. Toured. Pushed himself harder. Experimented more. Never stopped searching for new sounds. New ways to express what he felt. But he only had 13 more months. September 18, 1970. London. A hotel room. An overdose of barbiturates. Jimi Hendrix died at 27 years old, joining the infamous club of artists who burned too bright and too fast. When the news broke, the music world stopped. Robert Plant, in a press conference, could barely speak. Brilliant, he finally managed. Just that one word. What else could you say? Looking back now, more than 50 years later, Woodstock takes on even more significance. It was one of Jimi's final grand statements. One of his last chances to show the world what he could do. To take everything he was, the soldier and the artist, the American and the rebel, the bluesman and the revolutionary, and pour it all through 6 strings and a wall of amplifiers. 3 days of peace and music. That's what they called Woodstock. But Monday morning? Monday morning was something else. Monday morning was 30,000 people in a field, tired and muddy and sunburned, watching a 26-year-old guitarist play the national anthem like the world was ending. And maybe it was. Maybe the 60s really did end that morning. Maybe that was the last moment before everything changed, before the dream died, before reality came crashing back. Or maybe Jimi showed everyone what was possible, what music could do, what art could say when words failed. 400,000 people left Woodstock before Jimi Hendrix played. 30 to 40,000 stayed. And those 30,000? They witnessed the moment when rock and roll stopped being just music and became something else. Something bigger. Something that could speak truth to power, that could express the inexpressible, that could take the national anthem and make it scream and weep and somehow, impossibly, remain beautiful through it all. That Monday morning in August, while the rest of America was drinking coffee and starting another work week, Jimi Hendrix was redefining what music could mean. The people who left Woodstock early made a practical choice. They had jobs, responsibilities, lives to return to. But the people who stayed? They witnessed history. And 55 years later, we're still talking about it. Still trying to understand what Jimi did that morning. Still hearing those bombs and that hope and that beautiful, terrible truth he pulled out of his guitar while the sun rose over Max Yasgur's farm. Woodstock ended at 11:15 Monday morning, August 18, 1969. But what Jimi Hendrix started that day, that will never end.